Okay guys, I'm going to do a quick lesson on principles of training. This is unit 1.2b, so 1.28 was components of fitness, and then we're on to principles of training. All right, you can stop the video at any time to take notes, or I will send you in the direction of some YouTube clips. I've given those links separately on Google Classroom, so you can load them up ready for 1, 2, 3 for each clip if you would like to. Okay, so by the end of the unit, you need to know the following definitions of principles of training. So SPOR is how we remember it, and be able to apply them to personal exercise or training programs. So the first principle of training is specificity, progression, overload, reversibility. Okay, so if you want to pause that video and write down those learning objectives in your book, and we will talk through. So you need to know the definitions and be able to give examples in a training scenario. Okay, that's the next one. We'll go on to that when we get to it. Okay, so sporting scenarios. So athletes are looking to improve their performance. Which athlete would benefit from training this way? So there's going to be a number of scenarios. You've got to write down which one would benefit most from that type of training and why. So who would improve their performance more by going for a 10-kilometre run? A footballer or a golfer? So pick which one you think would benefit from going for a 10k run, and then tell me why they would benefit. Then you can put why would the other athlete not train this way? What would they focus on instead? So, or how might they train? Okay, so feel free to pause it, answer that question. Scenario 2. So who would improve their performance more by lifting weights to build muscle? A shot put thrower or an archer? Why? So who needs to build muscle? Why do they need to build muscle? Why might the other one not train that way? What would they focus on instead, or what could they focus on instead? Pause it, write down your answer. Scenario 3. Who would improve their performance more by completing a reaction time drill? A high jumper or a tennis player? Why? Now, with every component of fitness, there is some element in every sport. You've seen this from your coursework that you need every component of fitness. However, who in this scenario needs reaction time more and why? And then what would the other athlete use to train, and what would they focus on instead? Pause it, answer it. Who would improve their performance more by running 100 metres as fast as they can 10 times? A marathon runner or a long jumper? Why? So 100 metres, short distance. So as fast as they can, so it's sprinting. Which of those two athletes needs to be able to sprint? Why do they have to be able to sprint? Why do they have to be able to go fast? Okay, who is it more specific to? Pause it and answer it. Principles of training then. So, principles of training should be followed to help improve performance. So there are 4 principles of training. You follow them to improve performance. That's the key part. So we've got SPOR, specificity, progression, overload, and reversibility. So now you need to know each definition. So I would like you to read the definitions below and try and match them to the correct term. So draw it out in your book and you can match them after. So we've got any adaptation of training will be lost as a result of not training. A greater than normal stress that is applied on the body for training adaptations to take place. Matching the training to the needs of the sporting activity and individual. Gradual increase in the exercise in order for the body to adapt. Sorry, I just got a notification. I'm so popular. So you need to decide which one sounds more like it could be each of them. All right. So pause it, write them out, match them up. And in 2 seconds, I'm going to give you the answers. So specificity, that is matching the training to the needs of the sporting activity or individual. So specificity, you think of it being specific. So you're making it specific to the activity and the individual. Progression is gradually increasing in exercise in order for your body to adapt. So each lesson you make progress, you want to gradually increase it so you do make progress, your body is adapted. Overload, a greater than normal stress that is applied on the body, so you're overloading yourself for training adaptations to take place. So if you do not increase, let's say for example, the weight you are lifting, if you never increase how much weight you're going to lift, you're never going to build more muscle. You increase the weight, you're more likely to make adaptations. Okay. And reversibility. So if you've done all this training and you've got all these adaptations, your muscles have become stronger. If you stop training, all of that will be lost. So any adaptation of training will be lost as a result of not training. So you've done your couch to 5K, for instance. So over that time, you have developed your fitness. You've probably got quicker. So your cardiovascular fitness will have improved. If you then stopped, let's say you tore a ligament in your foot, you've stopped that training, all that fitness is going to decrease, it's going to disappear, okay? And when you eventually go back to training, you will not be at the same level that you were when you've ended or when you got injured, okay? So there are the answers. So specificity is matching the training to the needs of the sporting activity and individual. So it must be geared towards the activity or chosen sport. So every sport has its own specific needs. Divers and long distance runners would not train the same. They would train differently. So you need to train to develop the correct muscles for the activity you're doing. So if your activity is all upper body or lower body, you have to make sure you're developing the correct muscles. You also might have to train based on what type of fitness you need. So a sprinter will need speed, whereas a long distance runner would need more cardiovascular endurance. And also you develop your skills. So a weightlifter, for instance, does not need to know how to kick a football, whereas a footballer might come in handy. Okay, so it's making it specific to what you are training for. So there is no need for a specific training within a sport. For example, there is also a need, that was totally misread from me. So a goalkeeper will not necessarily do the same training as an outfield player. Okay, why? How do you think it would be different? What skills do they need that midfielder does not need? Okay, so have a little think about that. This is video 1, so you can watch the video and I want you to identify how it is being applied in the video. Secondary question, so they use bikes. What benefit will that have to a footballer? Okay, so it's a 7-minute video. Pause this, go and watch it, and then have a little think. Okay, so where is the training specific to what they're doing? All right, so have a pause, go and watch. So the training for a shot putter would be different from the training for a marathon runner, obviously. How would training be different? Okay, so this is starting to get into exam answers or exam questions. So why would their training be different? What would be different about it? Okay, so pause it, write a couple of sentences on that. A little bit of help. You would not ask a shot putter to run 2 miles, or you wouldn't ask a runner to use heavy weight-based exercises. So if that helps you to explain further, please use it. If you're training for a weightlifting competition, it's not much use going to swim every day. Funny that. So what would you focus on? A little bit more help. You need to concentrate on strength. Obviously, weightlifting requires strength in your arms and legs. Why is swimming not the best option for that? And then lastly, can you think of your own sporting example? So where they were specifically trained to the sport, you can use those photos or have your own example would be good, please. There's a little tip for those of you that may need it. We should. Progression. Okay, so as I said earlier, progression, it gradually increases the amount of exercise in order for the body to adapt. Keyword there is gradually increasing. You don't want to go too hard too soon, okay? More likely to get injured. So it involves working the body harder than normal and gradually increasing the amount of exercise you do. This makes your body adapt to the training levels and therefore you can get fitter. So there are following summaries, write down your answers. So Becky is a beginner runner and she runs 3 kilometres 3 times a week. What will happen as a result? So will Becky get fitter? How will their 15th 3-kilometre run feel? And then what changes to apply progression? So give me an example. Well, how would you change her training program? So she's running 3 kilometres 3 times a week. How would you make it progress? Pause it, write down your answers. Okay, next scenario. John does 20 press-ups every day as part of his workout. What will happen as a result? So same questions. Will he get fitter? How will the 20 press-ups feel on the 20th day? What changes would you apply for progression? So how could you make him progress and improve his fitness? Next one. Sam lifts 10 kilograms when performing a bicep curl. What will happen? Will he get fitter? How will 10 kilogram bicep curl feel on the 15th day? What would you change? Okay, so this is video 2. Watch this video clip. See what progression is being applied. Or how could it be applied? Okay, so watch that one, pause it, think about it. You can write little notes, video 2. This is how progression is being applied. Just do bullet points, that's absolutely fine. Okay, the link is on Google Classroom. Don't know if you can see it on this screen. Okay, when you're back. So a rugby player looks to increase their fitness before the season. They would use progression. To do this, they may try and run for a longer duration of time every time they go for a run. So extend your answer to achieve AO3. What component of fitness would this develop? How will this affect performance? Okay, so you really want to go into as much detail, talk about components of fitness. You want to show off. So when you go into an answer any sort of question, you show off all your knowledge on PE. Okay, pause it, write it down. And then sporting examples, can you think of your own? Where a sporting person will train, use progression for their own sport. So the tip, how could a weightlifter use progression? What component would they focus on and why? Sorry, clicked really fast. Okay, thirdly, overload. So overload is when a greater than normal stress that is applied on the body for training adaptations to take place. Now we have a principle that goes within overload, which is the FIT principle, which we'll talk about in our next little lesson, okay? And that slots in, and it's how to put more stress on the body, really, for adaptations to take place. So athletes need to monitor their performance and training levels and adjust the amount of work done in order to increase fitness. So as we said earlier, if you just work at the same level consistently over a long period of time, you'll reach that level of fitness and you won't necessarily get any fitter. Okay, you have to increase the level or the how often, how hard you train, so you improve that fitness further. So in order to increase fitness, you must work the body harder so that there is some stress and discomfort. Due to this, the body will adapt and become fitter as it responds to the stress that is being put under. Overload can be achieved by increasing the frequency. So this is the FIT principle, which is how often you train. Intensity, how hard you train. Type or duration of the activity. So time and type are the last two for the FIT principle, but we'll go over them later. Okay, so that's how overload can be achieved. So progression is usually linked to overload because you need to make the exercise progressively difficult by increasing the overload. So to make the progression progress each week, you have to overload your body. Okay, so as we said earlier, we had Becky is a beginner runner and runs 3 kilometres a week. Brilliant. But how do we overload? So we have to think about frequency. So could we increase it? Intensity, could she work slightly harder and try and do that 3 kilometres in a quicker time? Time, how long she's spending on that activity, and type, could we change the activity? Could we make it longer? John does 20 press-ups every day, same sort of thing. Okay, so how could you overload it? So frequency, intensity, time, how long he spends on it, and type. So type, we'd ignore that for a minute because let's just say he's sticking with press-ups. Time, well, he's doing 20 press-ups, so we're looking more at the reps rather than the time he's doing it. So frequency, so if he's doing it every day, that's already, we can't really increase it much more. You could increase it to twice a day, or you could also increase how many reps he does. Instead of 20 press-ups a day, he starts doing 25 press-ups a day. And Sam lifts 10 kilograms when performing a bicep curl. We have little to no information on that apart from that he lifts 10k when doing it. We don't know how many reps he's doing. So could we look at increasing his reps? Could we look at increasing the weight to make changes, to overload him? You don't want to increase it massively because that's more likely to have an injury then. So these are video 3 and 4. So the links again are on Google Classroom. So watch the video and then try and identify how overload is being applied in the video. How could overload be applied in this instance is your question. All right, so have a look at them, write a couple notes down, bullet points, fine. So sporting example then. So a footballer is looking to build strength. They would use overload. To do this when they train, they lift weights. In order to apply overload, they would increase the amount of weight or how many repetitions they do. So extend your answer. So why would a footballer want to increase their strength? How will that then affect their performance? Pause it, write an answer. Okay, and again, can you think of your own examples where a sports person would train and overload for their sport? How would a long distance runner use overload? What component would they focus on and why? And lastly then, reversibility. So any adaptation of training will be lost as a result of not training. So we've always remembered this before, is reversibility is like reversing in a car, you're going backwards. So any training's done is now been lost because you're going backwards, all right? So it's the process of losing fitness levels. It is the opposite of progression and overload and can occur when training stops due to an illness or injury or when training season ends. When you get to end of season, you often have a long break until the next season. So for example, netball season stops around April. If you don't take part in summer league, which lots of people don't, netball then doesn't start again until September. That's a big break. What's going to happen to fitness levels then? So it can affect elite performer whose season is finished. There we go. They may become out and say, obviously I'm an elite performer. When the sporting season finishes for athletes, what do you think they do? Do you think they just sit around? Yeah, they probably relax on some lovely holidays, I'm sure. But what would they continue to do? So if they don't exercise at all, so let's say a professional football for 4 to 8 weeks, what's going to happen? What would their performance look like if they didn't do anything? Okay, so write a few notes on that. Video 5, preventing reversibility. So during the off-season, it's important to continue to exercise so that fitness is not lost. Athletes will also use this time to rest and recover, so they won't be training as hard, they won't be overloading, but they won't stop exercising completely because it would make pre-season very difficult and it would impact on performance when they go back again to compete. So have a look at that video. So a sporting example then. So if a tennis player was to suffer an injury and not be able to train, they would experience reversibility. They would lose their fitness and they would need to train harder to build it back up once they've recovered from an injury. If they rush back into playing, they would not be able to perform at a high level that late into a set, and then they would become tired easily. This would mean that their shots would lack power, making them easier to return. If they also return quickly from injury or too soon, they probably can do more damage, okay? So they will never build back up that fitness. So choose one of the sports below. If an athlete was to become injured or stop training, how would their performance be affected? Okay, so choose one, don't mind. So, and answer that question. So pause it and answer. Okay, so in your book now, I want you to try and apply each of the principles of training to a sport. I don't mind what sport you can choose. You can choose an athletic event like shot put. You could choose netball as a position centre if you would like to, up to you. You might find it easier to talk about your sport, but it's up to you. So I want you to discuss how each of the principles of training could be used. So specificity, progression, overload and reversibility. And how does it improve fitness? So each answer should feature a description of the principle. So you need to give the definition. So A1, you're saying what it is. What is specificity? Okay, what is progression? What is overload? What is reversibility? So how, and then an explanation as to how they would use it. Okay, so think about the components of fitness that are most important to that sports person. That's what they need to focus on in their training. So they might overload that. They need to show progression that way. And then analysis. So why would this be beneficial? Okay, so that why, because is your keyword there. Because this is important because. Okay, so have a go, pause, answer that. So this would typically be a 6-mark question. In fact, I think there was a very similar 6-mark question, which I will try and get an example for you at some point. So it was a couple of years ago. It was the 6-mark question was principles of training. So have a go answering that. Try and do it. You could do separate paragraphs for each principle of training. So what is the one? So start with specificity. Do that bit, and then go on to the next one. Progression, each one again. Okay? And we will start with that next lesson. Bye.